The battle began like every other space conflict in galactic history, with massive ships firing devastating weapons across the cold darkness between stars. But within minutes, something happened that the Void Hunters had never experienced in thousands of years of conquest and consumption. Their enemies started laughing at them. Captain Jake Morrison dodged a blast of dark energy that could have vaporized his entire ship, then immediately opened a communication channel to his crew. "Well, that was dramatic," he announced, his voice carrying the same tone he might use to comment on a bad movie. "Did everyone see that slow, ominous approach they just did? Very original, guys." Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez was coordinating defensive patterns with the Empire ships while somehow managing to provide running commentary like a sports broadcaster. "The Void Hunter on our starboard side is doing that thing where they pause dramatically before firing. I think they want us to be impressed by their scary red energy buildup." Ensign Pete Carter, who had grown up considerably in the past few days, was monitoring communications across the entire battle zone. "Captain, the Empire ships are asking if they should use their devastating plasma cannons as actual weapons instead of light shows." "Tell them yes," Jake replied, spinning his ship around a Void Hunter vessel that was trying to look menacing while charging its weapons, and ask them if those cannons can actually do anything besides make pretty colors. Across the battle zone, Supreme Admiral Zix Thilla was discovering that human tactical suggestions were surprisingly effective. His ship's weapons officer, a nervous creature that looked like a cross between a butterfly and a computer, was frantically adjusting the plasma cannon settings. "Supreme Admiral," the butterfly computer reported, "the humans are correct. Our weapons can actually cause damage if we stop worrying about making them look impressive and focus on making them work properly." Zix Thilla stared at his weapons display as his decorative light cannon suddenly became real military hardware. "Why did no one ever mention this before?" "You never asked us to actually hurt anything, sir," the weapons officer replied. "You always wanted maximum visual impact with minimum chance of damaging the surrender ceremonies." Meanwhile, Dr. Kevin Walsh had made a discovery that would change everything. Working from the combined databases of human and Empire science, he had found the one weakness that the Void Hunters had never encountered. They took themselves incredibly seriously and had no defense against ridicule. "All ships," President Hayes announced over the fleet communication channel. "This is Operation Mock and Awe. Dr. Walsh has identified a critical vulnerability in our opponents. They've spent so long being feared and respected that they have no idea how to handle being laughed at." What followed was the most devastating psychological warfare campaign in galactic history. Human ships began broadcasting running commentary on Void Hunter tactics like they were providing color analysis for a sporting event. Empire vessels joined in, their crews finally understanding that sometimes the best weapon against intimidation was refusing to be intimidated. "Oh, look. Another slow dramatic turn," Amy Rodriguez announced over the open communication channels. "They're really committed to this whole ominous space demon aesthetic, aren't they?" Captain Jake dodged another energy blast and immediately responded with tactical analysis delivered in the tone of a movie critic. "I appreciate the commitment to theme, but the execution is getting repetitive. We've seen this exact same attack pattern 4 times now." The Void Hunter ships began to falter in their formations. These were creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia, whose mere presence had caused entire civilizations to surrender without fighting. They were accustomed to inspiring fear, despair, and hopeless resistance. They had never faced enemies who treated their carefully crafted image of cosmic horror like a community theater production. "This is impossible," screeched the Void Hunter fleet commander, his voice carrying across all communication frequencies. "You should be cowering in terror. You should be begging for mercy. You should be afraid." "Buddy," Jake replied cheerfully, "we've been dealing with politicians, reality television, and social media for decades. You're going to have to try a lot harder than spooky space demons to impress us." The psychological impact on the Void Hunters was immediate and devastating. Their attack formations, which had been perfected over thousands of years of successful conquests, began to fall apart as individual ships started hesitating and second-guessing their dramatic approaches. One Void Hunter captain, whose ship looked like a cross between a Gothic cathedral and a torture device, tried to regain the initiative with an especially ominous maneuver. He approached Jake's ship at an angle designed to maximize the intimidating silhouette, while his weapons charged with appropriately scary sound effects. "Behold your doom, primitive creatures," the Void Hunter announced in a voice like grinding metal. "We are the darkness between the stars, the hunger that devours worlds, the end of all hope." "That's a really good villain speech," Jake replied appreciatively.
"Did you write that yourself, or do you guys have a manual?"
"Because I've got to say, the dramatic pause timing is excellent, but the delivery feels a little rehearsed." The Void Hunter captain was so thrown off by the critique that he forgot to fire his weapons at the optimal moment. When he finally remembered to shoot, Jake had already moved his ship out of the way and was offering helpful suggestions about improving the dramatic timing for next time. Across the battle zone, similar scenes were playing out as human crews treated the cosmic terror like an elaborate performance that wasn't quite hitting the mark. Empire ship captains, inspired by their human allies, began offering their own commentary about the Void Hunter aesthetic choices and tactical presentations. "The red energy effect is very nice," commented General Kortuyop, the former destroyer of hope. "But have you considered that the slow charging sequence gives your targets too much time to move out of the way?" Supreme Overlord ASDF-K, the teddy bear alien, chimed in with his analysis. "The ship designs are impressively scary, but all that decorative armor probably makes you less maneuverable in actual combat." The Void Hunter morale collapsed faster than their battle formations. These were creatures whose entire identity was built around being the most feared force in the galaxy. When that fear disappeared, replaced by constructive criticism and helpful suggestions, they found themselves facing an existential crisis in the middle of a battle. Their fleet commander made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "We have consumed 1,000 worlds," he shrieked across all frequencies. "Entire species have been devoured by our endless hunger. And how's that working out for you now?" President Hayes asked from Earth. "Because from where we're sitting, it looks like you've spent so much time being scary that you forgot how to actually fight people who aren't impressed by your whole doom and gloom routine." The Void Hunter fleet began a general retreat, their ships limping away from the solar system, while their crews tried to process what had just happened to them. They had come expecting to terrorize and consume another primitive species. Instead, they had encountered enemies who found their carefully crafted image of cosmic horror genuinely amusing. As the last Void Hunter ship disappeared into hyperspace, probably to find a nice quiet corner of the galaxy where they could think about their life choices, the combined human Empire fleet began cleanup operations and damage assessments. "You know," Jake said to his crew as they watched the enemy retreat, "I think we might have accidentally revolutionized galactic warfare." "By making everyone laugh at themselves," Amy agreed. "By proving that the universe is already absurd enough without taking yourself too seriously on top of it," Jake replied, settling back in his captain's chair with a satisfied smile. The galaxy would never be quite the same again. Jake Morrison stood in the middle of the massive Galactic Council chamber. The room was bigger than any stadium on Earth. Around him sat thousands of alien beings from across the galaxy. Some looked like giant birds with metal wings. Others had tentacles instead of arms. A few glowed with their own light. All of them stared at him with what he could only guess was disgust. The human ambassador wore his best diplomatic uniform. The dark blue fabric felt heavy on his shoulders. His hands stayed steady at his sides even though his heart pounded like a war drum. Behind him stood the only other humans allowed in the chamber. Captain Bill Hayes from Earth Defense Command kept his face blank. Dr. Carol Price from the Science Academy held a small recording device. The Zephyrian Chancellor floated above the center of the room. Her body looked like living crystal that sang when she moved. Her voice came out as musical tones that the translation device turned into words Jake could understand. "Ambassador Morrison of the species known as humans," she began, "you stand accused of bringing chaos to our peaceful galaxy." Jake had heard these charges before. During the past 6 months, the Council had put humanity on trial. They said humans were too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous to be part of galactic civilization. The evidence they presented made Jake sick to his stomach. They showed video of human wars, soldiers fighting in trenches, cities burning, nuclear bombs turning entire landscapes into glass. They played recordings of human music that they called aggressive noise. They even criticized human sports as proof of violent nature. Boxing and football became evidence that humans could never live in peace. The Altarian delegate stood up on his 6 legs. His purple skin rippled as he spoke. "These humans have only been in space for 200 years. Already they have caused 17 border disputes. They refuse to follow proper diplomatic procedures. They ask too many questions about technology we consider sacred. More voices joined in. The Centaurian representative with her 12 arms waved them all at once. Humans expand too fast. They take risks that endanger everyone around them. They will not accept our guidance. Jake wanted to defend his species. He wanted to explain that human curiosity led to amazing discoveries. That human determination had solved problems other species thought impossible. That human compassion had led them to help struggling colonies even when it cost them resources. But the trial was already over. Everyone in this room had made up their minds before he ever walked through the doors. The Chancellor's crystal body rang like a bell. We have heard all testimony. We have reviewed all evidence. The time has come for judgment. A massive display screen appeared above the chamber. Numbers began flowing across it as thousands of council members cast their votes. Jake watched the count climb higher and higher. The votes against humanity piled up like stones on a grave. 847 votes to banish Earth from the Galactic Federation. Only 3 votes in favor of letting humans remain. The Chancellor's voice turned colder than deep space. By the authority granted to this council by 5,000 years of galactic law, we hereby find the human species guilty of excessive aggression and failure to conform to civilized standards. Jake felt the words hit him like physical blows. Around the chamber, alien beings made sounds that his translator turned into cheers and approval. A few species remained silent, but none spoke in defense of humanity. The punishment is complete banishment from Federation space. The Chancellor continued. All human vessels must withdraw beyond the outer rim within 1 solar rotation. Any human ship found in Federation territory after that time will be destroyed without warning. Captain Hayes stepped forward. His voice carried the weight of military authority even though he kept it respectful. Chancellor, what about our colonies? We have civilian settlements on 12 worlds within Federation space. The Altarian delegates' tentacles writhed with what looked like joy. Evacuate them or abandon them. The choice is yours, but no human will remain in civilized space after the deadline passes. Dr. Price raised her recording device higher. Her voice shook slightly, but she kept speaking. What about our research stations? The medical facilities we built to help other species? The trade agreements that benefit everyone involved? All void, announced the Centaurian representative. Humans have proven they cannot be trusted with such responsibilities. Jake found his voice at last. You're making a mistake. Humanity has contributed to galactic peace. Our scientists have cured diseases. Our engineers have improved your technology. Our diplomats have prevented wars. The Chancellor's crystal form pulsed with harsh light. Your contributions are noted and dismissed. The decision is final. You have 1 year to remove all human presence from our territory. The translation devices around the chamber began shutting down. The universal symbols above each seat changed from discussion mode to dismissal. Guards moved toward the human delegation. Jake looked around the massive room one last time. He saw the faces and forms of species that humanity had tried to befriend. Some looked satisfied with the verdict. Others appeared uncomfortable but unwilling to change anything. A very few seemed sad about what had just happened. As the guards escorted them out, Jake heard fragments of alien conversations. The translators caught bits and pieces before shutting down completely. Finally rid of those troublemakers. Should have done this years ago. Maybe now we can have some peace, but one voice stood out from the rest. An elderly Andromedan with silver skin and glowing eyes spoke quietly to his aide. They have no idea what they just unleashed. The human delegation walked through corridors that had once welcomed them, past offices where they had worked beside alien colleagues, through gardens where human children had played with young beings from across the galaxy. Everything they had built was being torn away. Captain Hayes broke the silence as they reached their shuttle. Sir, what do we tell Earth Command? Jake looked back at the council building one last time. The massive structure reached toward the stars like a monument to galactic unity. But for humans, it had become a tomb for their dreams of peaceful cooperation. We tell them the truth, Bill. The galaxy doesn't want us anymore. Dr. Price secured her recording device in her bag. What happens now? Jake climbed into the shuttle and settled into his seat. Through the viewport, he could see Council security ships already moving to escort them to the border. The message was clear. Humans were no longer welcome here. Now we go home, Carol, and we figure out what comes next. As their shuttle pulled away from the station, Jake Morrison began composing the message that would change everything. President Lisa Hayes needed to know that humanity's place in galactic civilization was over. But something else was just beginning. The Council had voted to banish Earth. Soon they would learn what happened when humans stopped asking for permission and started making their own rules. 2 years after the exile began, Commander Roy Blake watched the construction of Haven Prime from his command chair. The space station grew larger every day as human engineers added new sections. What had started as a simple outpost now stretched across 10 kilometers of space. Docking bays held ships from 17 different human colonies. The sight still amazed him. "Sir, the morning reports are ready," announced Major Helen Price as she approached with a tablet full of data. The communications officer had worked without rest to coordinate between dozens of scattered human settlements. Her dedication impressed Roy every single day. Roy took the tablet and scrolled through the numbers. 17 new colonies this quarter? That's ahead of schedule. Helen nodded with satisfaction. The quantum drive ships are making the difference. We can scout and supply new worlds faster than anyone thought possible. Dr. Porter's technology is changing everything. Through the command center's main window, Roy could see human ships moving with purpose through the void. Cargo haulers carried supplies to distant worlds. Survey vessels searched for new planets to call home. Military patrols protected the growing network of human space. None of this should have been possible so quickly. General Sam Carter entered the command center with his usual confident stride. The man had commanded Earth's defense forces during the Council negotiations. Now he oversaw humanity's expansion into the unknown. His presence always made everyone stand a little straighter. "Roy, we need to talk about the weapons development program," Sam said in a voice that carried across the entire bridge. Roy handed the tablet back to Helen and followed Sam to a private office. The room was simple but functional, like everything humans built these days. No wasted materials, no unnecessary decorations, just what worked and what lasted. Sam activated a secure holographic display. Images of new ship designs appeared in the air between them. These weren't the sleek diplomatic vessels humans had used in Council space. These ships looked dangerous, built for war rather than negotiation. "The first squadron rolls out next week," Sam explained as he highlighted various weapon systems. Plasma cannons that can punch through any known armor. Shield generators stronger than anything in the Council fleet. And quantum drives that make our ships impossible to catch. Roy studied the designs with growing amazement. "How did we develop this so fast?" Sam's smile was sharp as a blade. "Turns out humans work much better when nobody is telling us what we can't do." The Council spent so much time limiting our research, they never realized what we could accomplish without limits. The quantum drive breakthrough had opened doors nobody expected. Dr. Alan Porter's team had discovered that space itself could be manipulated in ways Council science claimed were impossible. But impossible was just another word for something humans hadn't figured out yet. Meanwhile, on the frontier world of New Texas, Mayor Dan Foster watched the latest group of refugees arrive. The transport ship Homeward Bound touched down in a cloud of dust and engine exhaust. Families emerged carrying everything they owned in simple bags and containers. Dan walked toward the landing pad with his usual steady pace. He had been one of the first humans to reach this world. Back then it was nothing but rock and thin atmosphere. Now it supported a thriving community of 50,000 people. The transformation still amazed visitors from other worlds. "Welcome to New Texas," he called out to the new arrivals. "I know the journey was hard, but you made it. That's what matters now." A woman with 2 young children approached him. She looked tired and worried but determined. Her name was Susan Wright, and she had traveled here from the ruins of a failed Council world. Like so many others, she had chosen the uncertainty of human space over the false security of alien rule. "Is it true what they say about this place?" Susan asked as her children stared wide-eyed at the bustling settlement around them.
That humans can build anything here?
"Do anything they want?" Dan nodded toward the town center where human engineers were constructing a new hospital. "See that building going up over there? 6 months ago this was empty wasteland. Now we have schools and factories and homes for everyone who wants to work for them." The children ran ahead toward a playground where other young humans were playing games their parents had invented. Susan watched them with tears in her eyes. On Council worlds, human children had to follow strict rules about acceptable behavior. Here they could be as loud and energetic as they wanted. The Council said humans were too chaotic for civilization, Susan said quietly. Dan smiled as he watched the bustling activity around them. Maybe they were right. Maybe we are too chaotic for their civilization. Good thing we're building our own. Back on Haven Prime, Roy Blake received reports from human settlements across the Outer Rim. The numbers were staggering. Population growth exceeded all projections. Industrial output doubled every 6 months. New colonies appeared faster than the bureaucrats could name them. But the most important report came from the deep space monitoring stations. Human sensors had detected something that made Roy's blood run cold. Council survey ships were approaching. The boundary between civilized space and human territory. "Sir, we're picking up transmissions from the Council vessels," reported Helen as she worked her communication controls. "They're on a standard survey mission, but they're heading straight for the New California system." Roy stood up from his command chair. New California was one of humanity's most successful colonies. 50 million people called it home. If Council ships discovered what humans had built there, the secret would be out. The galaxy would learn that humanity hadn't just survived their exile. They had thrived beyond anyone's imagination. "Signal Captain Tony Miller aboard the Shadowhawk," Roy ordered. "Tell him we have a reconnaissance mission." The Shadowhawk was one of the new stealth frigates built with quantum drive technology. It could appear and disappear like a ghost ship. More importantly, it could observe Council activities without being detected. Human intelligence gathering had improved dramatically since leaving civilized space. Within hours, the Shadowhawk reached the Council survey fleet. Captain Tony Miller watched the alien ships through his advanced sensors. 3 vessels conducting routine scans of what they thought were empty star systems. They had no idea they were about to discover the greatest secret in galactic history. Lieutenant Beth Carter monitored the Council communications from her tactical station. Her translation programs converted alien languages into readable text. What she heard made her sit up straighter in her chair. "Captain, they're reporting massive energy signatures throughout this sector. Industrial activity on levels they've never seen before. They think they've discovered some unknown alien civilization." Tony smiled grimly as he recorded everything the Council ships transmitted. "Let them think that, Beth. The longer they stay confused, the better for us." The Council survey team had no idea they were looking at human settlements. Their arrogance had convinced them that primitive humans could never build anything worth noticing. That mistake was about to cost them everything. "Sir, should we interfere with their mission?" Beth asked. Tony shook his head as he watched the alien ships continue their futile scans. "No need. Let them report back to their superiors. Let them tell the Council that something big is happening out here in the dark." The Council had voted to banish humanity from their civilized galaxy. Soon they would discover what uncivilized humans could accomplish when nobody was watching. Lieutenant Commander Zix-9 of the Altarian Survey Corps stared at his sensor readings with growing alarm. His ship, the Council Explorer, had been mapping empty systems beyond the galactic frontier for 6 months. What he found in the outer spiral changed everything he thought he knew about the universe. "Commander, these energy signatures are impossible," reported his science officer through trembling tentacles. "Industrial output on this scale would require billions of workers and hundreds of years of development." Zix-9 checked the readings again, hoping his instruments had malfunctioned. Instead, he found confirmation of the impossible. Massive space stations orbited dead worlds that now showed signs of terraforming. Ship traffic moved through systems that should have been empty. Most shocking of all, he detected quantum drive signatures that violated every law of physics the Council understood. "Send an emergency transmission to Council Command," he ordered his communications officer. "Priority 1 classification. We have discovered an unknown alien civilization of incredible power." The transmission traveled through hyperspace relays back to the heart of Council territory. Within hours, it reached the desk of Chancellor Vex Prime on the Council homeworld. The crystalline being read the report with growing disbelief. "This cannot be accurate," she announced to her staff. "No species could develop such technology in isolation. Our scientific principles prove it impossible." But the evidence kept mounting as more survey teams reported similar findings. Entire star clusters showed signs of massive development. Energy outputs that dwarfed anything in Council space. Technology that made their most advanced systems look primitive by comparison. Captain Tony Miller watched the Council ships from his position aboard the stealth frigate Shadowhawk. His advanced sensors monitored every transmission the aliens sent back to their headquarters. The panic in their voices brought a cold smile to his face. "They still don't know it's us," reported Lieutenant Beth Carter from her tactical station. They keep referring to unknown aliens with impossible technology. Tony nodded as he studied the tactical display. 3 more Council survey fleets had arrived in the past week, all of them trying to understand what they were seeing. All of them failing to recognize human engineering when it stared them in the face. Let them keep guessing, Beth. The longer they stay confused, the more time we have to prepare. On Earth's former moon base, Fleet Admiral Greg Norton reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The massive shipyard complex had grown beyond recognition since humanity's exile began. Where once a small research station had studied lunar minerals, now stood the largest military construction facility in known space. "How many ships do we have operational?" he asked his aide, Captain Laura Young. The woman had volunteered to stay behind when most of humanity fled Council space. Her sacrifice allowed the secret military buildup to continue without detection. Laura consulted her tablet with practiced efficiency. 3,000 combat vessels, sir, with another 500 rolling off the production lines each month. The new Titan-class dreadnoughts are particularly impressive. Greg walked to the observation deck overlooking the construction bays. Massive warships took shape under the skilled hands of human workers. These weren't the peaceful exploration vessels humanity had used during their time in Council space. These were weapons of war built by a species that had been told they didn't belong. The Council made one critical mistake, Laura. They assumed we would stay civilized after they threw us out. The mistake was becoming more obvious each day. Human colonies reported Council probe ships appearing at the edges of their systems. The aliens were clearly preparing for some kind of contact with what they thought was a mysterious new species. They had no idea they were about to meet the humans they had banished 5 years earlier. On the frontier world of Liberty Prime, General Marcus Webb received orders that made him smile for the first time in months. His garrison had been preparing for this moment since the first human colonists arrived. Now the time for hiding was over. "Attention all units," he announced over the military communication network. "Operation Revelation begins at 0800 hours. All stealth protocols are hereby terminated." Across human space, similar orders went out to dozens of military commanders. The Great Deception was ending. Humanity would finally reveal what they had built in the darkness beyond Council territory. The first contact came at the Kepler Junction, where a Council exploration fleet encountered what they thought was a patrol from the mysterious alien civilization. Admiral Claire Brooks commanded the human task force from the bridge of the dreadnought Defiance. Her 5 ships faced 20 Council vessels in what would become the most important first contact in galactic history. "Unknown vessels, this is, Admiral." Vex 2 of the Council Survey Command came the transmission from the lead alien ship. "You are trespassing in territory claimed by the Galactic Federation. Identify yourselves immediately." Claire looked around her bridge at officers who had trained their entire careers for this moment. Captain Jim Ross at the tactical station, Commander Ellen Davis at navigation, Lieutenant Frank Stone monitoring communications. All of them had chosen exile over submission. Now they would show the galaxy what that choice had cost the Council. "Admiral Vex 2, this is Admiral Claire Brooks of the Human Federation Navy. You are the ones trespassing in our territory." The silence that followed lasted nearly 30 seconds. Claire could imagine the confusion aboard the Council ships as their translators confirmed what they had heard. The banished humans had not only survived their exile, but had built a navy powerful enough to challenge Council authority. "Impossible," came Vex 2's response finally. "Humans were banished from civilized space. You cannot have developed such capabilities in only 5 years." Claire's smile was cold as vacuum. "Admiral, we thank the Council for their lesson in self-reliance. Exile taught us things we never could have learned under your protection." The human ships moved with precision that startled the Council observers. Their formations were tighter than anything in Council tactical doctrine. Their sensors were more advanced than the aliens thought possible. Most disturbing of all, their quantum drives allowed them to appear and disappear at will. "This ends now," Admiral Vex 2 transmitted as his fleet moved into attack formation. "The Council will not tolerate threats from primitive species." The Battle of Kepler Junction lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it ended, 20 Council ships drifted as wreckage while 5 human vessels remained undamaged. The impossible had become routine. Humanity had just defeated the most powerful military force in the known galaxy. Admiral Brooks recorded a message for transmission throughout Council space. "To the Galactic Federation, we offer this demonstration of human capabilities. The species you banished has learned to write our own laws. Any attempt to enforce council authority in human space will be met with appropriate force. The message reached every corner of galactic civilization within days. Species that had lived under council rule for centuries suddenly realized that the humans they had dismissed as primitive had become something far more dangerous. They had become free. News of the Kepler Junction battle spread through council space like wildfire. Within days, every species in the galaxy knew that the humans they had banished 5 years ago had returned as something far more dangerous than anyone imagined. The impossible had happened. The primitives had become the most advanced military force in known space. Chancellor Vex Prime stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council, with her crystalline form flickering with anxiety. Around her, thousands of alien representatives demanded answers to questions she could not answer. How had humans developed such technology so quickly? How had they built an empire in the outer darkness without anyone noticing? Most importantly, what did they want? "The human fleet is expanding into systems we considered secure," reported the Altarian military commander, through agitated tentacle movements. "Their ships appear without warning. They scan our installations. Then they vanish before we can respond." The Centaurian delegate waved her 12 arms in distress. "3 of our colony worlds have received messages from human vessels. They offer protection from council taxation in exchange for local autonomy. Several governors are considering the proposal." Panic spread through the chamber as more reports arrived. Human ships had been spotted near trade routes throughout the galaxy. Their transmissions promised freedom from council oversight to any species willing to join what they called the Human Federation. Entire star systems were beginning to question their loyalty to the old order. Ambassador Steve Parker stood in the center of the same chamber where Jake Morrison had received humanity's banishment 5 years earlier. But everything had changed since that day. Where once a desperate human had begged for mercy, now a confident representative of a growing power offered choices to the galaxy. The council had summoned him hoping to negotiate some kind of settlement. They wanted to understand what humans intended. They hoped to find a way to contain the threat to their authority. Instead, they found themselves facing a species that no longer cared what they thought. "Ambassador Parker," Chancellor Vex Prime began with forced dignity, "the Council acknowledges that humanity has achieved unexpected technological advancement during your exile. We are prepared to discuss your return to Federation space under appropriate conditions." Steve smiled politely, but his eyes remained cold as winter stars. Behind him stood Captain Robert Hill and Dr. Maria Santos, representing the military and scientific branches of human government. Their presence sent a clear message. Humanity was no longer asking for permission. "Chancellor, the Human Federation appreciates your belated recognition of our achievements. However, we did not come here to rejoin your organization. We came to offer an alternative." The words hit the chamber like physical blows. Conversations stopped throughout the massive room as thousands of alien beings tried to process what they had heard. The humans were not seeking readmission to galactic civilization. They were challenging it directly. Steve activated a holographic display that showed the true extent of human expansion. Red markers indicated human colonies scattered throughout the outer reaches of the galaxy. Green lines showed trade routes that connected dozens of species to human space. Blue symbols marked military installations that could protect anyone willing to accept human alliance. The Human Federation currently includes 47 species across 200 star systems. Our territory encompasses roughly 1/4 of the known galaxy. Our industrial output exceeds council production by a factor of 3 to 1. The numbers were staggering, but Steve continued with calm confidence. "More importantly, we offer something the council has never provided. True freedom for member species to develop according to their own nature, rather than imposed standards." Angry voices erupted throughout the chamber, as council representatives realized the scope of human achievement. The Altarian delegate's skin turned deep purple with rage. "You cannot simply ignore galactic law. The council has maintained order for 5,000 years. Steve's expression never changed. "You are absolutely right. We cannot ignore galactic law. That is why we wrote our own." The statement silenced the chamber completely. For 5 millennia, the council had been the only source of legal authority in civilized space. The idea that another organization could simply create its own laws challenged the foundation of everything they believed. Dr. Santos stepped forward with a tablet containing legal documents. The Human Federation Constitution guarantees rights that Council law does not recognize. Freedom of technological development, freedom of cultural expression, freedom to leave the Federation at any time without penalty. Captain Hill added his voice to the presentation. Unlike Council membership, Human Federation alliance is voluntary. Species join because they choose to not, because they fear conquest or economic pressure. The Chancellor's crystalline form pulsed with desperate authority. The Council will not recognize any competing government in this galaxy. Human expansion into our territory will be met with military force. Steve nodded as if he had expected this response. Chancellor, that is certainly your right. However, you should know that 17 Council species have already applied for Human Federation membership. The Andromedan Republic submitted their application this morning. The news struck the chamber like a thunderbolt. The Andromedans were one of the oldest and most respected species in Council space. Their decision to join humanity would encourage others to follow. The careful balance of power that had lasted for millennia was crumbling. Furthermore, Steve continued without mercy, our intelligence indicates that 43 additional species are considering similar applications. It appears that freedom is more attractive than many Council members realized. In the months that followed Steve's presentation, the galaxy changed in ways nobody had imagined possible. Human fleets appeared throughout Council territory not as conquerors, but as liberators offering choices that had never existed before. Species that had chafed under Council authority for centuries suddenly found themselves with alternatives. The Vegan Collective joined the Human Federation after their Council governor imposed new restrictions on their artists. The Rigel Commonwealth followed when human traders offered better prices for their minerals than Council merchants. The Tau Ceti Alliance switched sides when human engineers helped them solve pollution problems that Council scientists had ignored for decades. Each defection weakened Council authority and strengthened human influence. What had begun as punishment for one species had become a revolution that threatened the entire galactic order. The Council's vote to banish Earth was becoming the decision that destroyed their own power. Admiral Claire Brooks received reports of the changing galaxy from her flagship orbiting the human, capital world of New Earth. The planet had been terraformed from a lifeless rock into a garden world in less than 3 years. Cities rose from empty plains. Orbital installations connected the surface to a growing network of space habitats. Most importantly, beings from dozens of species walked the streets. Together in peace, ma'am, the latest intelligence. Estimates show that the Human Federation now controls 35% of galactic territory, reported her intelligence officer, Commander Paul Reed, Council. Authority has been reduced to approximately 40%, with the remainder claiming neutrality. Claire looked out at the bustling space traffic around New Earth. Human ships mixed with vessels from allied species in patterns that would have been impossible under Council law. The rigid hierarchies and careful protocols of the old order had given way to something more chaotic but infinitely more alive. The Council made their choice 5 years ago. Paul. They decided humanity had no place in their civilization. Now the galaxy is choosing between their version of order and our version of freedom. The vote to banish Earth had been 847 to 3. The vote for species to join the Human Federation was still being counted, but early numbers suggested the Council would soon find themselves the minority in a galaxy they once thought they controlled completely.